Based on the video script you provided, here is a paraphrased version. The word order and sentence structure have been adjusted, while the core narrative, writing style, and tone have been preserved. In 1947, as America was rebuilding in the post-war era, cities expanded and prosperity bloomed. Yet, deep within the remote hollows of Harlan County, Kentucky, time seemed frozen. The Jackson property was situated 3 miles from the nearest dirt road, reachable only by a treacherous footpath that wound through thick forest and crossed 2 streams with no bridges in sight. For years, the locals had whispered about the family residing there, the ones who never came to town, attended church, or sent their children to school. It was Deputy Marshal Robert Clayton who eventually stumbled upon the dilapidated cabin. He was on the trail of a missing drifter last seen heading toward the eastern ridges when he found the structure. The roof had partly caved in, and nature had reclaimed much of the clearing. What struck Clayton immediately was the profound silence. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, the very air felt like it was holding its breath. The cabin's interior was a somber time capsule. Crude, hand-hewn furniture from mountain timber filled the single room, dominated by a stone fireplace. Its mantel was carved with initials and dates stretching all the way back to 1847. However, it was the floor that captured Clayton's attention. Several newer boards seemed deliberately placed to hide something underneath. Prying them loose released a rush of decay and mildew. In the shallow space lay a rusted metal box, sealed with wire and wax. Inside were Marie Jackson's records, dozens of pages, written in a crumbling hand on whatever scraps she could find, book pages, seed packet backs, even birch bark. Her documentation spanned 43 years, from 1889 to 1932, and it read like a chronicle of biological catastrophe. Marie Jackson, born in 1871, was the daughter of Thomas and Elizabeth Jackson, who were brother and sister. Her records began matter-of-factly, listing names and dates with the precision of someone aware they were documenting a tragedy. Orphaned in 1868, Thomas and Elizabeth were left alone on the homestead and subsequently married. They had 8 children. Marie was the 5th. The entries grew increasingly disturbing. Marie described her siblings with clinical detachment, noting physical abnormalities that appeared more frequently as their family tree folded inward. James was born deaf and blind in one eye. Ruth never grew past 4 feet and couldn't speak clearly. Samuel had twisted limbs. The youngest, Martha, died at 3 from seizures, a loss Marie detailed heartbreakingly. Darker still, Marie's records showed the pattern continuing. In 1889, at 18, she bore a son fathered by her brother, James. She wrote of this union as a simple fact of their existence, with neither shame nor pride. This was their reality in Jackson Hollow, the only one they knew. Deputy Clayton sat in that ruined cabin for 3 hours, reading by lantern light. The pages detailed births, deaths, and marriages that weren't truly marriages, producing children who were simultaneously cousins and siblings. This genetic tangle yielded increasingly severe consequences. Marie's son with James, named Thomas, was born with a cleft palate and heart defect, surviving only 2 years. A second child in 1892, fathered by another brother, Samuel, appeared healthy but developed seizures and lived to just 7. In total, Marie had 13 children between 1889 and 1914, 9 died before age 10. The 4 survivors bore the unmistakable marks of their heritage. Tucked between the pages, Clayton found faded photographs showing a family that seemed to embody suffering. Their faces looked simultaneously young and ancient, bodies misshapen in ways that turned his stomach. Most disturbing were their eyes. Everyone stared with the same hollow, knowing expression, as if fully aware of what they had become. Marie's final entries, from 1932, detailed her grandchildren, born to her surviving children who had perpetuated the isolation. She wrote of a great-granddaughter who couldn't swallow properly and starved, of twin boys whose organs were shared until infection claimed them. "We are cursed by our own blood," she wrote in shaking script. "What we have done cannot be undone. The mountain holds our shame. Isolation is its own kind of violence." Emerging from the cabin at dusk, Clayton carried the metal box, its weight feeling immense. Reaching town hours later, covered in mud and visibly shaken, he went straight to the sheriff's office. "We need to find them," he said simply. "Whatever's left of them." The subsequent investigation became one of the most intensive in Kentucky state history. Sheriff William Hodges assembled a team including a state social worker, Patricia Morrison, and Dr. Edmund Cartwright, a physician specializing in genetic conditions. Their mission: locate any surviving Jacksons and document the effects of generations of isolation and intermarriage. County records proved nearly useless. The Jacksons had avoided all official documentation for nearly a century. Local law provided the first leads: tales of strange sounds from the hollow and brief, unsettling visits by family members trading furs for supplies. One shopkeeper recalled a young woman around 1935 whose face was all wrong somehow, eyes too far apart, mouth twisted. She paid with an old silver dollar and vanished. In late November 1947, the team ventured into the mountains. The journey was arduous, taking most of a day. They found the main cabin where Marie's records were discovered, but deeper in the hollow lay 4 more structures. 2 showed recent use. Smoke rose from one. As they approached, dogs charged, stopping short but forming a menacing barrier. A figure emerged, a tiny woman with a hunched back, her face bearing the unmistakable signs of genetic compression. She wore a dress patched countless times. "Who are you?" she demanded. "This is Jackson land. You got no right." Patricia Morrison stepped forward peacefully. "We're from the county, We're here to help." The woman laughed without humor. "Help? Ain't nobody helped us in 80 years. Her name was Ruth Jackson. Her mother was Elizabeth, whose mother was Marie. You found Grandma Marie's box," she stated. "She always said someone would someday." Invited inside, the team was confronted with shocking primitiveness. No electricity, no running water, an overwhelming smell of unwashed bodies and sickness. 3 others lived there: Ruth's brother Samuel, whose legs were so twisted he dragged himself, Ruth's daughter Naomi, who was cognitively delayed, and Naomi's son, a boy of about 5 named Thomas. Thomas had such severe physical abnormalities that Dr. Cartwright had to step outside. He couldn't walk or speak, his skull misshapen, his hands bearing only 3 fused fingers. Yet he was alert, responding to his mother's voice with affection. Over 2 days, the investigators documented everything. Dr. Cartwright noted skeletal deformities, organ malformations, and neurological impairments. Patricia Morrison pieced together their family tree, revealing the full horror. After Marie's death in 1933, the family had dwindled. Ruth and Samuel were among the last of her grandchildren. Naomi was Ruth's daughter by her brother Samuel, continuing the pattern. Thomas's father was also Samuel. "We know it ain't right," Ruth admitted. "We know what we are, but we're all we got. This hollow is our prison and our home." They found 47 unmarked graves scattered throughout the property, though Dr. Cartwright estimated there could be twice that many. The infant mortality rate must have been catastrophic, he noted. When asked why they never left, Ruth's answer was devastating: "Where would we go looking like this? They'd lock us up or worse. At least here we're free to be monsters in peace." The compiled documentation revealed a genetic catastrophe. The isolation began in 1847 when second cousins Jeremiah and Martha Jackson homesteaded the hollow. After they died in 1868, their children, Thomas and Elizabeth, faced a choice and formed a union that doomed their descendants. Dr. Cartwright's analysis showed that even their first children displayed concerning symptoms. Marie's generation continued the pattern, having no concept of the danger. By the 3rd generation, Ruth's, the manifestations were severe. Dr. Cartwright identified markers for at least 15 genetic disorders within this single family. Naomi, representing the 4th generation, had an extremely high coefficient of inbreeding, equivalent to a child of a father-daughter union. Young Thomas's coefficient was even higher. Social worker Patricia Morrison also documented the psychological impact: profound shame, a dim awareness of cause and effect shown by Ruth and Samuel being half-siblings, a failed attempt at diversity, and a deep-seated fear of the outside world. Marie's own records included pleas for family members to leave, but they were trapped by fear, shame, and lack of education. As Dr. Cartwright concluded, The Jackson family represents a complete failure of isolation. Human beings are not meant to exist in genetic bubbles. The investigation also revealed a disturbing final detail: the Jacksons were not unique. Throughout Appalachia, other families existed in similar, isolated situations. The state of Kentucky now faced an unprecedented dilemma regarding the 4 survivors. Dr. Cartwright argued for immediate relocation for medical care. Samuel's infected leg was life-threatening, and Thomas needed specialist attention. Patricia Morrison, however, warned of the psychological harm of forced removal from their only world. Sheriff Hodges noted the legal violations but saw no purpose in prosecution. The case became a public sensation in early 1948, with journalists portraying the Jacksons as either victims or degenerates. A compromise was reached in March 1948. The state would provide medical supplies, food, and regular visits, allowing them to stay. Young Thomas would be offered special education services. Ruth accepted with relief. A state nurse, Eleanor Banks, began monthly visits in April 1948. She treated Samuel's infections, taught sanitation practices, and brought vitamins. She grew attached to Naomi, who showed warmth and loved music. Thomas began receiving visits from a pediatric neurologist, Dr. Ellen Foster, who discovered his cognitive abilities were better than assumed. Through spring and summer, their situation stabilized. But tragedy struck in September 1948. Samuel developed pneumonia. Eleanor arrived to find him barely conscious, but heavy rains made emergency evacuation impossible. He died 2 days later. His death devastated Ruth and Naomi. Samuel had been the family's provider. Without him, survival became impossible. In October 1948, Ruth made the decision to move with Naomi and Thomas to a small state-provided house in the town of Harlan. It was time, she said, to stop hiding. The transition was extraordinarily difficult. Ruth struggled with electricity and running water. Neighbors stared. Naomi was overwhelmed by town noise, often hiding in closets. Thomas, paradoxically, adapted better, his health improving with regular care. Ruth gave several carefully managed interviews, speaking of her grandmother's records and the hope that their honesty would prevent such suffering elsewhere. "We didn't choose this," she said. "We were born into it, but maybe by being honest about what happened to us, we can help make sure it don't happen to nobody else." The Jackson case had broader impacts. Kentucky strengthened rural outreach and medical screening. Marie Jackson's records were preserved by the State Historical Society for Medical and Social Research. Ruth Jackson lived in Harlan until her death in 1967 at age 62. She never fully adapted but persisted, driven that her family's suffering would teach lessons. Naomi remained dependent but found joy in simple things. Young Thomas lived to age 23, far longer than expected, learning to communicate through simple signs. He died in 1970 from heart failure. Thomas was the last Jackson born in the Hollow. With his death, the genetic line ended. The story's impact, however, continued. Dr. Cartwright published papers on the case. In 1975, the Kentucky legislature passed the Jackson Act, requiring genetic counseling for at-risk isolated communities. Patricia Morrison wrote a book, *Hollow*, emphasizing the family's dignity. Eleanor Banks continued nursing, keeping their photos as reminders. The Hollow itself was reclaimed by Forest and designated a protected site in 1995. A small memorial erected in 2001 reads, "Here lived the Jackson family." Their story reminds us of the importance of connection, the dangers of isolation, and the resilience of the human spirit. Researchers still occasionally visit. The medical case continues to inform genetic research, serving as a vivid illustration of why diversity matters. Marie Jackson's records, preserved in the Kentucky Historical Society archives, remain a document of extraordinary power, a woman's desperate attempt to make sense of her family's suffering and ensure their existence mattered. They discovered Marie Jackson's records in 1947, and the Appalachians were never the same. Not because the mountains changed, but because it transformed our understanding of isolation, family, and how choices echo through generations. It's a raw and uncomfortable chapter of American history, A reminder that behind every forgotten community are real people deserving of compassion. As Ruth said in one of her final interviews, "We were real. We loved each other. We did the best we could." Don't let us just be a sad story. Let us be a reminder that every person, no matter how different or damaged, deserves compassion and help. That's all we ever needed. That's all anyone needs. If you've watched until the end of this powerful story, you've witnessed something profound. Before you go, do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel, because stories like this need to be told and remembered. Second, leave a comment below saying, ****, I watched until the end, ****, so I can see who truly connects with these hidden histories. Third, give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to understand that behind every historical tragedy are real people whose experiences matter. These are the stories that change how we see the world, and you've just experienced one of the most profound. Thank you for witnessing the Jackson family's truth. I hope this paraphrased version meets your needs. Please let me know if you would like any further adjustments.